When life throws you an unexpected curveball, we can do a couple of things. Do you crumble or do you grow stronger? Well, welcome back, because this is another inspiring segment with our mental fitness coach, Carly Taylor. Our conversation takes us through delicate balance of mindfulness and purpose in our daily lives. Carly once again opens up about her family's journey through her son's health challenges, sharing raw and powerful lessons about resilience and adaptation. I feel like this is a masterclass in turning adversity into strength. You know, go back to Paul Taylor's, her husband's book, Death by Comfort. It's just, it makes perfect sense. Tuning gets clear. Anyway, here's part 3. Why do you care so much? Why did you go on this journey? Let's tell us a little bit about your life on a personal level to why we're doing this today.
Yeah, okay. But I really have been on a bit of a journey I was searching for something definitely when I was young. I came from a broken home. My parents split when I was 3 years old, and my dad remarried shortly after. And and they ended up having a couple of kids, and it was a very challenging time for me. I was from about the age of 5, 6 up throughout my teenage years, when I would go for my visits there was the message that was being drummed into me, or the message, I shouldn't say that, I should say the message I was receiving from a very young age was, you're not good enough and you don't belong. And you think about it, as a child doesn't see the perspective of another person. You know, now if somebody was talking to me or treating me in that way, I would wonder what the hell was going on with them. You know what I mean? It's like, is something going on? It's like, why would you be like that? But as a child, you don't think like that, because a child just thinks through the lens of love and safety and shelter and connection. And so that narrative, it built this narrative of you don't belong. And that carried with me all throughout my childhood and my teenage years. And look, it's carried with me right up until now. I still have that automatic thought of you don't belong, or it might not be in those words, it might just be a feeling, and that you're not good enough. And I can recognize that now, and I know where it comes from.
Yeah. That's the key though, isn't it?
That it is the key. And I've never been one to look back and go, I need to analyse my childhood, and once I've done that, everything's going to be all right. Yeah. But what I do now understand is about childhood brain development. And so, trauma, the word trauma has been thrown around a lot lately, and I've never considered myself having a trauma background, but I think there are different levels of trauma, and there are what we call adverse child experiences, and I definitely had the adverse child experiences, and that affected my neuro network, and I have this automatic reaction. My gremlin has been developed to protect me and go, you better not go because you don't belong. You better not do this podcast because you're not going to articulate yourself well. You know, it's just that chat. That doubt is based on the past.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a victim. I'm just saying it as it's more very pragmatic. I know where this comes from, but I don't need to let it rule me. So, and I think that's the key. I think if you can understand how you were brought up, how your automatic thoughts and maybe your automatic responses to things are, how they're based on your childhood, you then understand yourself. You know, Aristotle said, know thyself. And I think it's so important to have this self-awareness, because without self-awareness, there's no change. So going back to me, I was on this journey, not consciously, but I felt this visceral, I don't belong. So I moved a lot. I feel like, looking back, I was on this subconscious journey of trying to find where I did belong. So I, finished off school. I moved to towns. I lived in Ballarat, then I was in Adelaide, then I went to Sydney. And look, I did some amazing things. I worked, nothing to do with what I'm doing now. I started off in music. I've got a music degree. I worked for the Sydney Symphony Orchestra.
Wow.
I then went in with their education program. I wasn't performing at that stage, but
Amazing.
I then went into advertising. I was a drifter. I don't know. I worked for Saatchi and Saatchi. I worked for Campaign Pulse. I worked for some top agencies. I don't know how I did. I was just like a log drifting on the river. It's like, oh yeah, I'll go this way, then I'll go this way, and
Yeah, wow.
then I thought I'll go to the States because I was born in the States. I have a US passport, so I just bought a one-way ticket. I thought I'm just going to go. And all along, it was because I didn't feel like I belonged, but I had some really cool adventures along the way. You know, there's two sides of this coin.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I was backpacking in Ecuador, and that's where I met Paul. Paul was backpacking as well, and that's how we met. And then it wasn't until I met Paul we had a common love of health and fitness, of personal development, all that sort of stuff. He was really into philosophy, and from there it kind of it grew. And I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Just to fast forward, we'd got married, moved to Australia. And then when we had our two kids, my second child, Oscar, he had digestive problems from the moment he was born up until he was 3, had chronic diarrhea. We didn't know what was wrong with him. So we thought he had a whole lot of food intolerances. So I ended up going full focus into nutrition. And I was full on paleo at that point. This is in the early 2000 or the mid 2010, 2014, around that. I was like full on paleo, and putting him on. He was wheat-free, gluten-free, dairy-free, all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, nutrition, I was just getting really passionate about this.
Yeah.
And I thought maybe I should go study nutrition. So I went and did my graduate diploma in nutrition at Deakin, and I started nutritional coaching. But what happened was I was getting clients. Paul was going and doing presentations, and I was getting clients sort of through the people in the audience, which was great because I had clients and bringing up the kids as well. But what I was finding, I realised that for most of my clients, it wasn't about the food that was the issue for them. It was the psychology, it was the mindset, it was the stuff, all the other stuff that was going on in their life, which was affecting their digestion or, influencing how much they ate or what they ate. And so I started really getting into more of the behavior change and the mindset stuff. And then that led to me finding Japanese psychology. Greg Creech, who runs the Toto Institute where I studied, was on a podcast called The Art of Manliness, and I heard him speak and I was like, wow. It was just so aligned. It was like almost like this light bulb went off for me going, this is what I want to study. So I signed up, and it kind of that's how it all started. But from a personal level, what it did, studying the Japanese psychology at the start has been a personal journey for me as well, because I live this stuff. I don't just coach it. I don't just, it's not just for my clients. This is for me as well. And
what makes you a better coach, right? Because if you didn't, it's like being a leader. If you don't live with purpose, how can you lead with purpose?
Yeah, exactly. And Morita therapy is all about living with purpose. So, but not this grandiose purpose. Like It's not this purpose that's out of touch. It's purpose every single day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, my attention then could go away from that voice that was telling me I didn't belong, and onto what I just felt was just so important for me and the path that I was going to take. And I completely pivoted in my approach to life. So, and I just continue. We're never exonerated from this work. It's not like there's an end goal here.
That's right. Yeah.
It's like every single day. So yeah.
What was some of the, the gentleman that you said you were listening to and you went, wow, what were some of those things that hit home with you that he'd said and that begun you on that journey?
It was that we live a life based on feeling rather than based on purpose. And, how you find your purpose every single day, even in the small stuff.
Yeah.
You know, even if you're washing the dishes, there's a purpose behind it.
Yeah.
And putting your attention onto that. And so I think they were the biggest things that came out for me.
Yeah.
When I went over to the Toto Institute, it was a fully immersive experience, a 2-week residential part of the course. And it really, the experience I had was being fully present.
Present, yeah.
Which is an incredibly hard thing to do when you're a human.
And especially with what we were saying before, with everything that exists nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. So there were no distractions. There were these beautiful exercises that we needed to do that just brought our attention to the present moment, and that was incredible.
Yeah.
And then I've tried to take that with me.
It's so true, because when I began on this journey 3 years ago, I think I mentioned to you on the pre-chat, and a lot of people already know this, but I almost passed after leaving another toxic work environment. I almost passed away through sepsis in the gallbladder, and after that, I wanted to come up with this purpose, this grandiose purpose, as you just mentioned, and I came up with like threefold reason why I wrote the book was to be the leader I always needed and wanted, to be the dad I always needed and wanted, and to be the man I always needed and wanted. But there are millions of smaller questions that need to go within that to how to achieve that. And again, that big purpose has definitely changed since then. It's pretty crystal clear probably with what I'm doing with the podcast, and that podcast didn't exist then. So that's definitely changed, and I'm okay with the bigger purpose. I think it's important to have that bigger purpose, but you can manipulate it whenever you feel fit, or you might be going in a new direction. But it's those smaller things that help you being present. And when I wrote, it's like I really want to write the prequel to the book of How to Lead with Purpose. I wrote that out of passion, based on what I'd been through with workplace bullying. And it's meaningful, and I still believe in it. But I feel like it needs to be what I've realized since, with everyone that I'm interviewing, speaking to, reading. I need to write a book with how to live with purpose.
Yeah.
To be able for it to follow on to how to lead with purpose. If, not so much leadership is my thing anymore. It's more self-leadership's probably more my thing than a leader in the workplace.
Yeah.
But for them to be successful leaders, they need to do what we've just been saying,
Yeah. And I love the Japanese approach. Is the Japanese, there's purpose in the simple things. And I can't remember where I heard it, but it's, if you're going to do something, do it well. So if you were going to wash the dishes, if you were going to cook, if you're going to, whatever you're doing, all these small things that we just take for granted and we might perceive as mundane, if you put your full attention onto them and do them well, then there's a purpose behind them. It's
like making your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
I remember a military guy, and I'm sure Paul can relate to this because he was in the military, but I always used to think, why do these guys have to do that? Well, it's simple, isn't it? If you can make that, you've accomplished something already, which then leads on to a bigger accomplishment later on in the day, whatever that might be. But it's very simple stuff, really, isn't it? Not that I make my bed every morning still. I probably need to do that a little bit.
Don't think mine's not made this morning yet.
There you go. We're both going to go and do it after this podcast.
See, we're not perfect.
No, we're not perfect. And that's important to highlight too, isn't it? So if, let's say I was about to take on and be interested in the Japanese approach, and I was going to go and see somebody for the first time, what would my first day, or what would somebody tell me to get me into it? Where would we start with that? Where was your first day? How did that look like when you first went to it? When you first took it on?
The course that I went to? Well, the first thing that we did was we worked out how many days we had to live.
Oh, I'm glad I asked that question.
Yeah. So based on a 30,000 day life, so around 80 years, and of course you can live more or less, we never know what's going to happen, but based on that, there is a calculator that you work out, and I'm not going to know the formula now, but I can give you the link if you want to put it in the show notes. You can actually work out how many days you've got left based on a 30,000 day. 30,000, 30, yeah.
I think you said dollar then, didn't you?
Days, yeah. You know what I mean. And then it was, well, how are you going to use those days? Like, how are you going to make every day count? What's important to you? And that reflection on your own mortality is not to be morose or depressing, but to actually use it as motivation, because we know as a fact that everybody is going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't like to think about that. And it's very scary and there's a lot of uncertainty. And so we kind of just push it aside and ignore it. But the fact is we will. So if you can reflect on that and go, well, then how do I want to live my days? Then that can be a good compass in the choices that you make.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was pretty powerful, first up.
100%, yeah. It makes us think, and hopefully it makes the viewers think a little bit as well, yeah. Okay.
Memento mori is what Marcus Aurelius back in 2000 years ago used to reflect on his own death every single day. And of course Buddhists do that as well as part of their rituals.
Wow. Yeah, okay. I like that. That's a little good intro to the philosophy for us to look at. I'm going to look into it.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to see a psychologist yourself or a therapist in your life at all?
I have. So in my 20s, I was going through, I felt like I was going to a dark place. I was spiraling down. I had started dabbling in recreation drugs, which wasn't helping that. I felt like I had no purpose. I didn't know what direction I was going in. So I've seen a couple of psychologists. And look, what I didn't know then was that there are hundreds of different therapeutic approaches. And so it's not comparing apples to apples. It's so important to know that and to try and find out what approach is going to work best for you. Yeah. Because the therapist that I went to, it was just talk therapy. And so I went in and just talked about my past, talked about the people in my life the focus of the conversation was that I was the victim. It was all their fault and I was the victim. And I used to walk out feeling worse than when I walked in. Now, that was my experience. I know a lot of therapy has been amazing for so many people, but I just didn't find the right therapist for me. Yeah. There was another therapist that just offered me medication right from the get-go, which I didn't take. So that was part of the journey. I was trying everything that I could. And I think what I was able to do is not hit rock bottom. There was something in me before I got to that stage that just went, Cully, you need to do something here. You need to take some sort of action. And that's when I would get up and leave and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Which in hindsight, I'm glad that I did it that way. There was probably, if that was happening today, it would be very, very different.
Yeah.
But that's what I felt I had to do. And I'm lucky that I had a sense of adventure because I went down to South America on my own. I don't know how I did that. I would not want my daughter doing that. It's like, no, you're not going to Ecuador on your own. But that's what I did. And there was
she nobody. Might meet a husband though.
Yeah, well, exactly. and there was something in me that I felt there is something out there for me, and I just was on this journey to try and find it. So that, and I have no regrets because it led me to where I am today, and I just love what I do, and I'm so fortunate to have found what I'm passionate about, and I really love helping people. When I coach my clients, and the only way it's going to be successful is if they grasp it, if they go, yes, I'm going to take this and I'm going to run with it, and they do the work and then they get the results, and it is so rewarding.
Yeah. And even before all of this journey, you were still in the health fitness industry, wasn't you? Because you own gyms here in Australia. Was it?
Yep.
You owned a gym?
Yeah. We opened a gym in Melbourne.
Yeah.
That was when I had my second child. So
full on.
Yeah, it was full on. Yeah. So we own that. We've owned a registered training organisation, so we train personal trainers. So Paul was an exercise physiologist, and he was very big in the fitness industry back then. So yeah, since moving to Melbourne, we've always been connected to the fitness industry, and that that's kind of led us into, we're not so much anymore, but that's what led us on this path. So yeah,
it's like you I suppose you've gone deeper in the sense you're looking maybe more at the root causes of everything now, opposed to, you know, not just keeping fit, but it's like the steps before keeping fit, isn't it? To put yourself in a position to go and get or keep fit. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's layers to it, isn't it? It's how I...
Oh, there's so many layers. Yeah. You got to work on your mindset, and it's not just about doing the stuff. You've got to be able to accept the emotions and the thoughts that come up rather than trying to suppress them. It's not suck it up and just get on with it approach. That it's very, dare I say, holistic.
You can say it, can't you? Because it's true. Yeah. I mean, I've been told to man up before. People who are close to me when I was going through my stuff, I've always been quite open. I'd always vent on the dog park to strangers and, you know, and open up. I've always been quite open. But what I did realize that was venting release the undesired emotions that day. But what I'd find, those undesired emotions, let's call them undesired emotions. I know they're all equal, and I know that they're all just as powerful as the next one, but I would find that they would be back. It didn't fix me venting. It was good for the day. It was good for maybe a few days, but it didn't fix me. I think I needed, not needed, but going through that crisis point of, I suppose, almost going into a coma, 30 minutes away from being a coma. That's what changed it for me. That's what changed the mindset. And I wish it was the bullying itself that changed the mindset, but it didn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm not saying everyone's like that. But what I have realized through the podcast is that everyone's been to a very dark space before they've made that change. And I think the podcast is, the message is, we've all got choices. Let's make them earlier rather than later.
Yeah, that's right. There's so much power in the choice that you make, and it's whether you choose the easy. But the easy is going to be the hardest in the long run.
Yes.
So
exactly.
Whatever you choose, it's going to be hard, whether you choose the short term or the hard now or the hard later.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And some of the points you made earlier, like with it's a unity, the body's a unity, but even like neurologists, 10, 15 years ago, only looked at the neck above.
Yeah.
They didn't look at anything below and realized the connection, you know, even just with the vagus nervous system, part of the system, and the gut with the brain, you know, being the second brain and so on. I know we probably don't say second brain anymore, do we? What or do we still use that term?
I think we do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So you've been through darkness before, as you've just been vulnerable about. Things always. Did you ever enter any other not darkness, but tough times with all this knowledge now? And I think that you guys would be better prepared, but you're still human. Have you gone down a darker space since having all this knowledge and this journey that you and Paul have been on? Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.